the more I kind of look at life, it's really the questions that we ask ourselves that we don't have the answers to that teach us the most. Because if you have a question and you can find the answer to that, you will indulge yourself in the fun facts for a moment. But if I give you a question that you don't have an answer to, and typically those comes from your passion, from your identity, from self-experience, much like solo traveling, then you go on an adventure, you go on a discovery period, and you find that for yourself, and you hold on to that answer for the rest of your life. So it is my healthy challenge to each one of you. If you guys haven't been on an adventure, find the answer to that question that you don't have an answer for yet. Do some of that. Let that someday be sooner than later, and maybe let that someday be today. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. This episode is all about adventure. In life, I hear a lot of people talking about, I want to find my purpose. I want to find my identity. And typically, in my understanding, is that your purpose and identity is typically tied to your passion. And one of the ways that you can speed up or ramp up the identification of that passion is through adventuring, going on trips, going on travels. And there is a profound Japanese proverb I like to refer back to called masogi. And the masogi is the art of doing something so spectacular, so awe-inspiring, so memorable once a year that you will remember that experience for the rest of your life. Now imagine if you do something like that once a year for the next 50 years, you got 50 amazing life experiences. Do twice a year, that's 100 life experiences. So with me on this episode is someone who has really embraced that philosophy. And I'm really excited for this conversation to dive into Brenton's experience on traveling, adventuring, and finding his inner child, his passion, just continue growing on new heights. So Brenton Scott, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much. I love the intro there, Kevin.
I appreciate that. Well, I speak the truth, and then I just see you consistently challenging yourself, taking risks to new different countries, embarking on adventures of a lifetime. I said, I got to hear that perspective. I got to get you on the show, and well, the story that you're living is very inspiring because a lot of people want to live as such a lifestyle. But what I'm also always hearing is there are always circumstances or there are moments in life that's holding them back from achieving that. We've all seen that that vacation on someone's vision board. Oh, that vacation's been there for like 10 years. Want to go to Europe for like 5 years, but every day, I don't have enough PTO. I don't have enough money. This car broke down. It's gonna be next year. Next year I'll go vacation. Next year I'll go to that travel. And then look back, 5 years goes by and that dream still have not been realized. So I hope we may be able to challenge the audience a little bit and then be able to switch that narrative of someday into today. So Brenton, in all of your solo travels, I'm wondering what's been some like the biggest takeaway when people that have not done solo traveling, tell us like what's it like internally feel like for you?
That's a great question. And the first thing that comes to mind is really how much time you spend with yourself and what it allows you to do. I'm a proponent of self-discovery and self-improvement. So whenever I go on these solo travel trips, there's always 2 or 3 things that I come out of the trip learning about myself that I didn't know before. You know, you're put out of this comfortable sort of bubble lifestyle that a lot of us end up living here in America or around the world with our jobs from 9 to 5 or family responsibilities every day. Where solo travel, you're moving, you're on the go, you're exploring new places, and you're having these almost inspirational conversations with people in the world who have entirely different backgrounds. So to answer your question there, the first biggest thing is you learn to become a lot more comfortable with your thoughts and who you are inside. And we don't give ourselves enough time of day to really self-reflect and analyze what emotions are we going through, what experiences are sticking with us, and really what are our traumas that are sort of holding us back from living this beautiful, wonderful lifestyle full of happiness. I think the biggest number 2 there would be, where have you felt you haven't discovered enough about yourself? And I think a lot of that comes down to you're in these uncomfortable places. Maybe you're at work all the time and you're not loving it. When you're outside in the world, you get to do everything you want to do. So I think the beauty of that is, you prioritize your passions and you really discover what those passions are in and of themselves. A lot of the times I'm at the office, maybe not loving the day-to-day routine, or it gets a little bit old. But when you're on the road and you're talking to people from different countries with different backgrounds and cultures everywhere around you, it really gives you a sense of, what can you explore in the world that you love that'll change your life a little bit, give you other things to think about or to learn more about. So I think keeping an open mind is really important when you're traveling. And then the
100%.
third one I'd say is be open to any conversation. Never
Love that.
know what the next person around that corner is going to say, what impact they'll have on you, and where that conversation will take you and your mind throughout the next day, few days, or even a week. So I think those three things have stuck with me throughout my travels and helped me learn a lot more about myself and the world around.
Absolutely. I want to really hone in on that first piece when you're talking about, hey, we're kind of living in a bubble in America. A lot of people are living very comfortable certainly compared to the rest of the world. And the ironic part is we tend to overthink a lot in America. And you talk about, your thoughts that you have inside your head. And it's really like the story that we tell our thoughts inside our head each and every day. That becomes the narrative of our identity. Each and every day we look ourselves in the mirror. Each and every day we get up, we tell us a story. Oh, am I capable? Am I beautiful? Am I kind? Am I nice? Am I confident? Maybe I'm a little timid. Whatever it is, that story that tells you. And over time, the question you begin to ask, is that a fulfilling story that you're telling yourself on a day-to-day basis? And I think Brenton and I can definitely attest to when you step in a position where in a new environment, not surrounded by the same people who's voicing the same whisper into your ear, whether it's your friends or your job or loved ones, sometimes they're positive, sometimes not so much. Then you begin asking yourself in this new environment, should I be upgrading the software that's in my head, the voice message I'm telling myself? And it's so powerful that you mentioned that. I'm wondering, because in your traveling, you've done, gone all over the world. What are some key moments that you really were able to kind of upgrade that identity, that software, just a new perspective? What are some countries, environments that allowed you to done that?
Yeah, I'd say the two countries that immediately came to mind were Switzerland and Brazil. And I'll start
Let's
with
hear it, man.
Brazil because I had a beautiful experience down there. I was meeting up with different friends, surfing on the coasts, and through conversation, I really had this sort of epiphany, realizing that I think in America we put too much emphasis on needing to know our future,
Yeah.
whereas down in South America, every day can be completely new, but that they embrace that uncertainty and beauty of spontaneity. Going down there and surfing every day, you're having conversations with people who are sort of going with the flow, enjoying life, and relaxing a little bit. And it made me think I need to put less stress on myself as I'm living this life and just enjoy and embrace exactly what I'm doing right now. And
Yeah.
I'm always hard on myself, saying you could always do more. There's other aspirations you should be chasing, but at the same time, when you're doing the things you love to do, you need to understand that it's happening right now, and that's the only time that you can truly embrace those emotions, those thoughts, and those experiences. So I had this sort of epiphany as I was sitting on the beach, looking out and realizing I am where I wanted to be 5 years ago. Maybe I wanted a new career or more money or a bigger house, but in reality, I wanted to travel. And so I was sitting there realizing I've been around the world. I've been to 30 countries now, and each one of them has brought this wonderful experience. And I think the importance of that is realizing sometimes you just have to let go of all these moving pieces in your mind and just appreciate what's happening right in front of you.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was saying that, I'll change my second answer. The second was actually Guatemala, because
Okay.
it was a similar moment to the beaches of Brazil, where I was in this extreme moment on this mountain, watching this volcano about to erupt. And I sort of came to myself and realized I'm doing exactly what I want to do. But as I looked into the distance, this crazy moment happened where wind is buffeting, there's clouds whipping by, the volcano is erupting in the background. And I almost sensed this sort of spiritual self behind this shrouded cloud that's
Come
telling me,
on.
experience the unknown, go further into what
Yes.
you don't know and understand, because
Come
that's where
on.
you'll face immense self-growth. And it was almost like this shadow that I, could just make out in the distance as these clouds were rushing by. And it just made me sit there and wonder, what's next for me in life? And am I ready to take that leap? So
Dude.
beautiful moments like that really make me want to get back out on the road. And even right now, I'm excited to take
Yeah,
because
let's
it's such a
go.
tremendous thing.
Let's go. I mean, y'all can watching this. Obviously, you see the joy that Brent and I are having in this camaraderie, in this conversation. It's like two little kids talking to each other. And a few points I want to touch base on what you said. First, being being totally present. And I really think in my life that when we're children, we're just so good at being present in a present moment because we're innocent. We're able to take in everything. We're able to have this carefree attitude and live in wonder, live in curiosity, live in the moment, and it just be able to absorb everything and observation, everything around us. But as we get a little older, somewhere along the line, responsibility starts stepping in. And the moment we start thinking about our future, the moment we start thinking, oh, I got bills I got to pay. Oh, I got this job interview kind of like, oh, I got this relationship's not working well. All those things start adding to our plate. And to me, that's the moment that you start thinking about your future. That's the moment you give up on your childhood. And to Brenton's point, why a external environment that's so different outside America will let you really embrace that childlike wonder is you are in an environment that's liberated from all those current future responsibility, even if it's just for a brief moment, let you tap into that inner childlike self. And the second part I want to mention where you're in Guatemala and then you just have this volcano going on in the background. First, it's absolutely epic. I wish I was there. Definitely jealous that I'm not there, but about to go on South Korea here pretty soon myself. So maybe I'll have a story or something to share when I'm out there in the ocean. But to that end, that's definitely the Holy Spirit speaking through you for a folk like us with a faith background that, God's telling you, hey, I'm excited to hear about your next adventure. But dial back in for the folks that are listening. Maybe that they've never done on a group adventure, like a solo adventure before. They've only done group adventures. What are maybe like, say, 3 things that every solo adventure should be wary of, should be cognizant of before they embark on their first adventure? So let's certainly not send them to Guatemala where you're an expert, you have strong legs, and you can run like Superman. Majority of people on the show probably cannot do that. So let's be cognizant of that. What are some 3 things that everybody can benefit from?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one, right as you're describing and sort of asking me that question, was you really have to learn to let go and not be in control of every possible scenario. So, let's say you're traveling over 3 months and you have multiple transportation options, buses, taxis, air travel. A lot of those things won't go as planned. And it's up to you to control sort of your mindset and your approach to these difficult or unexpected scenarios. And some of them can be beautiful. Let's say, for example, your flight gets canceled and you're in the middle of Brazil. And you have 6 hours to wait.
Yeah.
Well, who knows who you could meet in the airport, right? There could
That's
be
a
a
good way to
beautiful
look at it.
conversation with somebody you come into contact with. You could maybe pay for a lounge and go hang out there and eat some food. But take a second to reflect on how your trip's going in those moments.
Yeah. Hey guys, I don't run any ads in this podcast because my mission is to make an impact in your life and help you move the needle towards your aspiration. It will mean a lot to me if you subscribe, share, or leave a comment. I would love to hear from you so we can spread the word and make a further impact together. All right, back to the conversation.
And always be able to, approach the unexpected scenarios with a positive light. I'd say the second thing is be willing to approach anyone and everyone. Because when you're solo and on the road, a lot of the times you're looking for friends, for energy to share with other people and experiences. And there is a beauty in being alone, but there's also a beauty in expressing yourself and being true to your internal callings. I say that because a lot of the times we have this internal feeling that, hey, I should probably say something to this person, or oh, they have a beautiful dress or shirt on that I want to acknowledge. In those moments, I always try to do my best to act on the first thought that comes to mind, because again, these unexpected relationships and conversations on the road are some of the most memorable moments. You don't always have to pay for the excursions or beautiful, let's say, park entrances to to experience beauty. That could be in another person right next to you. And I'd say the third thing is try to let go of your schedule a bit. I think we can get too caught up in, having all these excursions planned and needing to be somewhere on time. I think, I'm trying to put emphasis on the idea of letting go of the strong grip you have on everything we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and just letting life sort of speak to you in a way of things happening, or sort of the domino effect of uncertainties folding out, because you shouldn't have control over every second of your life. You should embrace the beauty in those instances where things aren't going as planned. So a lot of my philosophy stems around being where you are now, similar to that book, Be Here Now, where you practice gratitude and meditate on the current moment, because you're not living in the future. You can't live in the past. You have to experience what you're doing right now and embrace it to the fullest. So that's what I get out of traveling usually.
Dude, that's so good, because the more I've done, and I feel like in the last 10 years of my life, and I'm trying to be more cognizant, to be more present. People that really done well in business, you're always planning. Oh, how's my earning this quarter? How's my revenue? What's my profit? Okay, how are we doing? What's the metric? You're always comparing, analyzing, and that involves you to be in the future tense. Yes, it's good to have that mindset from a business perspective, but the ability to turn that off, even for a moment, on a personal side, to be fully present, it adds so much more romance in your life, even on a personal level. And again, what you said about making connection, it's something I deeply am passionate about in life, because you begin to realize, after I've done enough traveling, and not much as you, I've been over a dozen of countries. But what I realize is you can always see more waterfalls. You can always see more beaches in life. But what's truly unique, what's truly remarkable, and that is the only thing that is unique, is that the conversation, the connection you make with people on an individual level, one-to-one, that person at the airport, that person on the lounge, that person getting a dumpling, standing in line. I had that experience in Australia, and then went on a date with this gal right afterwards. We took a walk by the beach. It was one of the most spontaneous romantic adventure of my life. And it started pouring after that. We shared one umbrella. Anyway, story for another episode. But all that's to say, kind of bring back, is you begin to realize the most beautiful moment you'll engage in these solo adventures are the moments you share with people, and sometimes unexpected people that God placed in your life. And I want to kind of be able to wrap this segment up with one particular story. And y'all heard the story of a Jonah in the Bible, where God has the plan for him to go to Nineveh. Hey, he said to Jonah, you're going to be preaching over here, you're going to spread my word. But he said, no, I want to do my own thing. But kind of resonate back to that solo traveling. God also believe, and maybe I'll add a fourth thing into this, is that the Holy Spirit, God has a plan for your life, and that plan is typically better than one we can plan for ourselves. And sometimes when we do go off course a little bit, you'll have to trust that there is this invisible hand that's going to guide you back. In his case, he was swallowed up by a whale. In your case, when you're on a solo traveling, maybe the flight's delayed 6 hours. Maybe there's somebody that you're meant to inspire at the airport. Maybe that you missed a train ride there. Maybe you were supposed to stay there in that town that night and then make a difference. And you were supposed to make a connection there. Who knows that's going to happen. So Brenton, what would you say is some life lessons or key points, really perspective to share with the audience, that for folks that, okay, maybe I'm kind of dabbling into it. You've shared some with some perspective already, but perhaps share with us a story, any one particular story that really stood out to you.
Well, I guess there's so many stories, but one that probably makes the most sense to share is this moment where I was in Switzerland, and I was on this hike above this small town, and I was with my cousin at the time. She had decided to stay in because it was a little bit snowy. Of course, we were, Switzerland, you barely ever get dry trails out there. But I'm hiking up this trail. Say that again?
That's good to know. I'm going to bring my raincoats when I go out there next. Yeah.
It could be snowing the whole year out there, depending on how high you are. But I'm hiking up this trail, and I come across this other hiker who is similar age and, pretty social, I can tell, because he's kind of talking to himself. We're all both jumping along. And we end up pulling up next to each other and having a conversation. And it turns out this guy's from South Africa. He's also solo traveling, and he's had this wonderful trip. And the beauty in the story is it turns out that he had gone on the same exact European circuit as I had, using the Interrail system, gone to all these places. And so essentially we spent the next 3 hours of this hike really getting to know each other, to say, hey, you are also in Portugal. Like, where did you go? Did you go to these vineyards? Did you try surfing on the coast? And basically turned out he was a very similar guy to myself. And so we ended up hiking with each other for the next 8 hours straight, all the way up to the peak at a beautiful lunch. We were sharing food, telling more stories. It was perfect. And we get back down to the town, and we're taking the Swiss train system back to our city. And turns out he's in a hostel right down the road from me. But the most beautiful part was our plan was to go to the same countries after Switzerland. So essentially, this solo travel experience turned out to me meeting this wonderful guy from South Africa and continuing to travel through Europe for another 2 weeks with him, through Germany. Then we went down to Slovenia, did more hiking. Along the way, we're just grabbing more friends. People are joining the conversation. We're going out to dinners. And I think that was so inspiring and motivating for me, because, sometimes you think you're going through life and you feel like you're the only person that thinks in the way you do or has the same hobbies as you. But every so often you'll come across somebody that's so similar to you in the most beautiful way. And it really sort of reinvigorates your joy of being who you are and expressing that sort of childlike wonder of the world and exuberance for new activities. And so I remember the end of that trip. It was a 3-month trip, and I was with this guy for about 15 days, just being so excited that I am who I am, that I can, just like myself, all over the world. Because a lot of times, we're in America and not as many people travel, or there's a little bit more difficulty because of the finances or getting away from work. But if you give it a chance, there's so many opportunities to make good friendships across the world. And so we're hoping to plan a trip coming up here next year, but we'll see what happens with planning and everything like that.
I love that. I love that so much. The ability that having that human connection, that's truly what's most valuable. At the end of our days, you're never going to look back on all the zeros in the bank account. You're never going to look at maybe the diploma on the wall, maybe the certification, maybe the trophies on the wall. What you're really going to care about is how you loved others and how they loved you. Who's on your bedside table, if you will. It's, grim as that sounds sometimes. But I want to, go back to what you said. Well, first one point being that a lot of people think in America, which is we're kind of in a unique country because stuff here is actually more expensive in America than the majority of the world. So I think a lot of time people have this fallacy to believe that if I go travel, I got to bring extra dough, I got to bring extra cash. It's going to be expensive. I got to prepare for that. No, what we've experienced, and Brenton, could you really quickly elaborate on that? It's not expensive as you think as it is to travel abroad. And he mentioned hostel. I know not everyone's comfortable staying there. Usually I'd want a private room if I stay at a hospital. But could you elaborate on that in terms of like cost structure about solo traveling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the sort of barriers that people think about is, the cost of a big flight.
Yeah.
Well, if you compare that cost of a big flight to, say, going out to dinner 3 different times or 4 different times, typically to get to Europe, it's, $800 to $1,000. 3 dinners in any city.
Quick, right there. Sorry to interrupt. 800 is that round trip or one-way flight?
800 could be round trips.
Could be round trip.
I mentioned Portugal probably would be the cheapest just because it's the westernmost country in Europe.
Gotcha.
I've seen flights to Spain for 800, 900, and then the further east you go in Europe, of course, it gets a little bit more expensive. But essentially, the way I like to think about things is, can I hold off on the local dinners for a month or 2, save up that money, which will buy me the biggest expense of a travel trip.
Come on.
So, for example, if I'm going on 2, let's say I go out to dinner 2 times a week. One of them could be a date, the other one could be with friends. That'll easily be $100 to $150 or $200, depending on where you're going, which is included. But if you just hold back on those dinner dates, restaurants, etc., eating out, delivering food, and save that up. That's the biggest expense, is always the flight. Once you land in a different country, it really just comes down to transportation, whether it's a rental car, buses, or let's say flights within Europe. But the second thing is accommodations. And, of course, with that private room, it could get expensive, but I like to think about it as comparing all these expenses to what we buy in America.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm looking to my right here, and I have a shoe collection that is probably, 10 pairs of shoes, 3 of which I actually wear on a week-to-week basis. So I think if people start to shift the mindset of less is more with their materialistic purchases at home, you can transition that into a whole entire experience of a trip. And I'm a proponent of the idea of I'd rather have a stronger life resume than resume of assets below me. Of course, I want investments, but all these things and these objects that we think are valuable are nowhere near as close to the value that experiences can provide to us.
Yeah. I love that. And even in our space, chances are you've been listening to my show for a while, you invest heavily in yourself, whether that's your education, whether it's your personal development, your fitness, health, faith, spiritual, all of that. That's what my show's about. But one particular area that not a lot of people talk about that I'm heavily passionate about is investing in experiences, what Brenton mentioned, because you'll learn more about yourself in those experiences, how you're under pressure, how are you in an unknown environment than anything else. This is like a direct feedback that you can get. And the second part I want to ask, typically when people first start like a solo trip, to your point, is they always pick Europe. It's always, here's what I'm hearing. Oh, I'm going on a France tour. I'm going for an Italy tour. I gotta go check out Italy. This is all. Usually it's gals. That's more so than guys, but I do get some from the guys. It's like they want to go Britain, France, Italy. Those are always the top 3 answers, like 90% of the time. In my experience, and kind of you mentioned Guatemala's, the most memorable experience I had solo traveling is Australia, Southeast Asia, and just those kind of not the ones that people think about, but on a complete opposite hemisphere, we're just so vastly different. So I'm curious, in your perspective, when someone's wanting to solo travel, getting that holistic experience is the typical go-to touristy spot or typical country that is at bucket list like France, Italy, check those off, or should they try something more unique?
I love that question, because everyone I talk to, even from family members, will always ask, why haven't you gone to Italy yet? And Italy is one place I haven't gone as an adult. And it's one of the prime examples of everyone wants to go there first in the middle of summer in July. But I think you don't necessarily get those beautiful experiences that I was describing, because everyone that's going to those places is not actually the locals. Sometimes full countries and destinations are so filled with external tourists that you don't get the true energy and the cultural experience that some of these countries or cities have to offer.
Yeah.
So I suggest for people to look elsewhere, find your own adventure. And that really comes down to, what do you like to do with your free time? What are the, hobbies that you have after work that you race to do? For me, for example, I'm in Denver. I like to go trail running and hiking and backpacking. I'd rather go to a place, let's say in, Eastern Austria than France or Italy, because there's just more of the things that I love to do in the Austrian Alps than in Italy. And I think, the same thing is true for the countries like, we go to Portugal for the wine. Well, is wine really your passion? Or are you just doing that because it looks pretty in the pictures? And you have to ask that question. Am I doing this for other people, or am I doing it for myself? And I found the more you self-travel, the more you realize who you are and what you love to do.
Dude, I love that so much, because the people that are most fulfilled in life, we all heard the saying, they don't care what other people think. They're just living their life. In fact, they're so busy living their life, they don't even have time to post on Instagram sometimes. And they don't have the biggest following because they're so busy living their life to the maximum, and just absolutely enjoying life. So something really consider what Brendan, you says, so spot on, because everywhere people go, it's like, oh, this is a perfect picture moment. Like they want to stage everything rather than just kind of being the moment, experience the unexpected. And ironic enough, that's actually how Brenton and I met. We met on a hiking travel all over Utah, and just his sense of adventure definitely resonated with mine. And funny enough, we met at work years ago through like this email exchange, and then we found out, hey, we have similar passion. You like to hike, I like to hike. Let's go on an adventure. And here we are, and then we became friends since then. And so, kind of speak to that, Brendan. The more that people kind of go on the solo traveling, that I would say maybe when you're starting off, try to do one a year. Do you feel like that's a good quantitative amount for people to go on one solo travel a year? They'll get enough experience, they'll get enough rejuvenation of this self new identity of installing this new software in a new environment? Or should people try to push for 2-3 a year? Or what's your sweet spot, would you say, when people kind of first starting this?
Yeah, I'd say, it really depends on how big of a trip you're going to go on, right? So if you can go on if you can only take Thursday and Fridays off for 1 week at a time, it might make sense to do multiple solo trips. But I would say, to play it safe and to really get the feel for a solo experience, you should start with one a year, right? So when I was younger, one interesting thing that I did was I was traveling with a group of people. They all went back home, but I extended my trip solo. So I was already in this new space, this new environment, and I had been there with people that I was comfortable with, but then they left and I got that separate solo experience. And this was in Australia. So it was like very far away. Family wasn't around. All connections were brand new. And so that was my first foray into solo travel. And it was wonderful because it was short, sweet amount of time where I had adapted to that culture and sort of, lived that lifestyle for a few days before being solo. So I would say the first year, start with one trip, see how you feel. Right? Solo travel is not necessarily for everybody. There's different stories that can take place and experiences that you undergo that would make you love it or hate it. But the only way to find out is just booking the trip. So start with one per year. And then I'd say, if it's really speaking to you and you've had sort of an epiphany on that trip, go for 2, maybe once in the spring, once in the fall, or do 2 trips throughout the summer. It really just depends. But once you build that familiarity and comfort by yourself, you're going to want to go more and more as soon as you get the time off. So
I absolutely love that. And to every point that you mentioned, every time I go on these solo trips, I feel my faith just grows exponentially, my relationship with God, because especially you're in a new environment, you bring your translator with you, which, by the way, you guys can download offline version, Google Translate. That's probably the cheapest way. It's for free. And so you don't have to worry about service. And then I bring my Bible with me and then just really let God kind of plan out how the next week or two that's going to unfold. And I want you to kind of talk to a portion from you mentioned of people that, hey, if that person only has 2 weeks of PTO a year, I want you to talk to that person, because let's be realistic. We have a group of people out there which that's only PTO they have. They got to budget a week for their family a year. That leave them with really 1 week for like vacation time and whatnot. Do you feel like a Thursday through Sunday, is it doable? Can they get enough experience in a foreign environment in 4 days? Or is it something like they really got to budget more time? Talk to that person.
I'd say to that person, 4 days is probably not enough, to be honest.
Okay.
Typically, you'll get there, and if it's far enough away, you'll be a little bit jet lagged the first day, and you'll sort of want to explore, so you'll be moving around a lot. And sometimes you can end that first day pretty exhausted. What I would recommend to people is there's this really unique, I'm not sure if it's a website or it's well known. There's probably some blogs about it, but look up how to optimize your paid time off throughout the year. And there's ways where you can extend 15 days of PTO into like 40, depending on how you out, right? So use holidays when they come up. If you observe religious holidays and you can leave by chance, try to take advantage of those. I'd say going for 4 days is a bit short because that last day you're probably prepping to go to the airport and you're not necessarily in the moment, like I've been talking a lot about. You're kind of thinking about the taxi to the airport, the 3 hours ahead of time arriving. It takes you out of that moment. So I'd say a minimum of 7 days, if you can take it, is optimal, because you get one weekend. Let's say you fly in on a Saturday afternoon. You spend Saturday exploring, resting a little bit, and then you have Sunday where, there's less traffic in the streets, usually, religious holidays, things like that. People are a little bit more sedentary in some of these places. And then
Hmm.
you have the whole week and you get to see, what's this place look like on a Monday versus the
Hmm.
Saturday when I arrived. And you sort of
Mm.
get a feel for where people hang out on the weekends, the social spots, what people
Mm.
do every day after work in these cities. Like in Germany, they'll go to Munich and you'll go to there's this big park right outside of Munich. And everyone is playing volleyball there on the weekends. But you
Yeah.
go on a weekday and it is like a ghost town. So you get
Mm.
to see sort of the variation in routine and lifestyles if you go for something like a week to see
Mm.
the weekends versus the weekdays.
Oh, on that note, if I may ask, because of Britain, you certainly work in a corporate environment, and what I've seen you do and is absolutely remarkable. How you're able to kind of stack your PTO, how you're able to extend. But obviously, the stuff that you don't want to share confidential, I won't ask, since this is a public podcast. So whatever you're comfortable sharing, may I ask you to kind of elaborate maybe some strategies and some tools that you've utilized to extend your PTO to allow you to have this amazing fulfilled experience to travel extendedly, like month at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
There's this wonderful program that my company has.
mhm,
Just for background for the listeners or viewers, I
mhm,
work in consulting, so I work with different financial institutions around the country with their operations programs. Um, so with that in mind, my company has this beautiful sabbatical program, which is
mhm,
essentially giving people who work at the company a chance to pursue their passions, to travel,
mm,
time with their family or their newborns, if that's the case, to really take a step back from work. And during those 3 months, the company or the individual person will find a replacement for themselves, whether they're an internal finance person or they're working with other banks like myself. And so I'd encourage people to try to think of scenarios where you could find someone to cover for you some of your responsibilities in those moments. Because, my company has a whole policy, a whole program around it. So it's quite easy to, submit requests and make them happen months in advance.
mhm.
But I'd say for the people that don't have this program available, see if it's possible. What's the harm in asking to see if this
That's
can
right.
work, right?
That's
And
right.
so part of it is one, planning far in advance. So every time I've taken a sabbatical, I've planned 6 months or more in advance to say, hey, let's say in next April, after the ski season here in Denver, I'm going to go to Norway for a month.
Mm,
Well, throughout that time, if I didn't have this program and my company was sort of filling this function for me, I would be looking for opportunities where some of my roles and responsibilities could be shifted to people on my team, right? Let's say there's someone under you who would like to get promoted, they're eager to have more responsibilities. You could give them, let's say, a weekly update deck to take over. And so you start thinking about how you can shift these pieces around like a chessboard to fulfill your responsibilities while you're away. Because of course the company's not going to want you away forever. You fill a role that is needed in the business. And so finding that strategic way to give responsibilities that can be covered
mm.
is one of the biggest things that can lead to a potential sabbatical or a leave of absence, you could say.
And also, I want to mention one thing I do is each year I try to maximize the time I can buy as pay time off, because a lot of time company they'll give you a bucket of PTO, maybe to have an optional portion. Again, won't know till you ask. Can I buy more
Mm-hmm.
PTO? Yes, you might have a little smaller paycheck, but what I'll say to that is the time away, that experience. It's truly going to be priceless moment you embrace that passion, going on an adventure of a lifetime. And I do also think this is an area sometimes for folks that are listening, because we talk a lot about entrepreneurship on this show. This is one of the true advantage of being an entrepreneur, that you're able to be within the company, have this kind of time away to kind of pursue, experience these life moments. And so just want to acknowledge and recognize that. So Brenton, right here, that as we kind of wrap this up on like this perspective of like solo traveling, any other life lesson or perspective that you think will be a tremendous value for the lessons, for the listeners that I have not covered?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that I've become better
Mhm,
at over the years, and that's really
mhm,
understanding your story.
mm,
Because we're in this busy lifestyle and we're so comfortable what we're doing all the time, it's very rare that we get to share what our experiences have been that have made us who we are up to this point. And I
yeah.
make that point to relate to instances where you're in these new environments and you only have 5 or 6 hours to hang out with somebody. Let's say it's your first day in a city within Colombia and someone's third day and they're leaving. In those moments, you want to optimize the time you have with this person. So to know your story and to be comfortable sharing it and being expressive of yourself and your learnings is a way to, one, share who you are, but two, learn from the other person and what they've experienced. Because let go of some of the barriers we set up for ourselves, it allows for these deep, intentional conversations where you can get to places, let's say, that you would get to with a good friend after weeks of knowing them. You can get there in the same day while traveling on the road with people, as long as you're comfortable and you've sort of understood who you are and how you've gotten to where you are today. I think there's such a beauty in that as you travel.
And what you'll find out, I can attest this with my personal experience, people are a lot more friendlier, more trustworthy than what we presume them to be, because we tend to have this narrative in our mind. Oh, someone's going to rob me. Someone's going to take advantage of me. Someone's going to rip me off. They see me as a transaction. I'm a tourist. I'm going to get ripped off. But in reality, majority of the people, even in places that seemingly a little bit dangerous, as some of my South America visits, that people are, the general local population, I would say, are a lot nicer and kinder than what we perceive them to be. And I'll kind of just want to wrap this up. And again, every guest I bring on the show, you all have the honor to reach out to them, and Brenton is no exception. So if you all have any questions about travel related, or just maybe want to do a second opinion, have Brenton be a sounding board. Hey, if I'm thinking traveling here, should I be paying this amount? Or what's maybe one item you would recommend if I'm thinking going to this country? Chances are he's been there, and I'll leave his contact information in the link below, because he, much like me, love to connect with you guys. And love to do a part 2 with you, brother, where we talk more about some of our story down the road.
Absolutely, man. I love this stuff.
Dude.
This is all about self-expression, and we're doing it right now.
Let's go, man. I can't wait for that second episode that where we share some of our in-depth travel story and then share some of that with you guys. And I'll end it with this, guys, is the more I kind of look at life, it's really the questions that we ask ourselves that we don't have the answers to that teach us the most. Because if you have a question and you can finally answer to that, you will indulge yourself in the fun facts for a moment. But if I give you a question that you don't have an answer to, and typically those comes from your passion, from your identity, from self-experience, much like solo traveling, then you go on an adventure, you go on a discovery period, and you find that for yourself, and you hold on to that answer for the rest of your life. So it is my healthy challenge to each one of you. If you guys haven't been on an adventure, find the answer to that question that you don't have an answer for yet. Do some of that. Let that someday be sooner than later. And maybe let that someday be today. So love you all. God bless you all. And I can't wait to see you guys in our next episode. And then take care and have a great rest of the day, everyone.